Yeah, it's important for every single moment.
I know.
Philip, nice to meet you.
Actual debate.
That's why I'm gonna say. Watch my.
Pleasure meeting you. The world Did you almost?
Ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna get started in about 10 minutes. Okay?
Okay. Philip is there. Nice to meet you. And you need a what? Okay. Eddie is coming all the way from the 6th district, all the way from Rockingham.
No, it's me. We're starting in 10 minutes.
Yes, he is. The one who's like a traffic. And he's coming from that far. Yes. Great. Yes. I'm not starting with 5 minutes. Yeah, man, he wasn't there when I did. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, right. That's right.
Hey everybody, how are you? Mike Van Meter, and I'm your Republican candidate for the 11th district here, 11th congressional district, Virginia. Unless you hate the country, you hate the state of Virginia, and you hate yourself. If you did vote for Attorney Connolly, and you'll fit well. Listen, real quick, you're going to hear the Senate candidates, but I want to just tell you something. I got back from Florida last night. I was telling the Senate candidates about this. Got back last night from Florida. Oh my goodness. I went down there for some family matters. I'm driving around the state, crisscrossing the state of Florida, and the motivation down there is unbelievable. If you haven't been down there, it is like every 2 blocks there's a Trump stand and Trump spirit. I didn't see one Biden sign or shirt unless it was Joe Biden. But guys, we gotta get that energy up here. We gotta get that energy up here. Because I want to tell you something. My opponent, Jerry Connolly, hates America and he hates you. He hates the state of Israel. He does not care that we have people come across the borders. He is not supporting anybody. He does not want to close the borders. He does not want to support Israel. He does not even want to support felons that come in here and commit violent crimes. He does not.
Says our borders in the Ukraine.
That's right. The only border he cares about is the one in Ukraine. And he's got to go. He has got to go. But we've got to get motivated. Now, I know you guys are motivated, or else you wouldn't be here. But what we have to do is get everyone else motivated. This last election cycle, because you know, Virginia, we have election every year, only about 35% of all registered Republicans showed up. That is unsatisfactory. Unsatisfactory. I need you to motivate the people around you. I need you to get everyone out to vote and then get those Democrats that are upset, and there are many of them, bring them on board with us. Because folks, let me say this, we cannot continue in this direction. Now, I'm supporting President Donald Trump. Whichever of these 5 gentlemen wins this Senate race, I'm going to be 100% behind. And everybody in this room is going to be behind this person. We're going to stop the infighting. We know who the enemy is. Let's fight the enemy. That's the Democrats. That's Joe Biden. Let's get these folks out. We're going to do it. Thanks, guys. Let's get it.
Thank you. Okay, everybody wants to stand up and you are pledge of allegiance first, and we get started. Okay. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
And to which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, on behalf of the American United Foundation, welcome to the U.S. Senate Town Hall. The American United Foundation is a nonprofit political action committee designed to bridge the division between our communities by focusing on critical issues that affect our lives. Our focus is to create Reagan-style big tent organization that brings people of all races, gender, and political leaning together as Americans focusing on initiatives that put our community, our country, and its people first. We believe that it is more that binds us that divides us. Tony Savio will moderate the town hall. Tony, you have the floor.
While we're waiting for Tony, I just want to mention that afterwards, we're going to have a roundtable discussion in the other room. You're all invited to be a part of that roundtable discussion. Give us your comments, we'll be included on a podcast. Thank you.
Thank you so much. During some last minute stuff, we had some candidates get here in these bathrooms, they're getting here being grilled a bit. This is all fun. American Foundation, we talked about, is here to bring this to light to people and answer real questions. And that's what it's gonna be. The candidates do not have any of these questions, about 40 questions. Randomly, they're gonna get selected for certain questions. Not every candidate is going to answer all the questions. The reason being is because me being a candidate going through this stuff, I just start copying the second person and the third person and the fourth person. What they say. We don't want that. So I can introduce the candidates. First we got, come on up. He's lucky number 1. Number 2, John Smith. Number 3, Andy Garcia. And the last, Scott Clark. Number 1. Introduce yourself. Sir.
Can you hear me? There we go. So I'm Jonathan E. Ward. I'm a candidate to the U.S. Senate. I'm a constitutional lawyer. I've been for the last 38 years, and I have the distinction of having defeated the Food and Drug Administration on constitutional grounds 8 times. I also had the privilege of defeating other agencies of the government in the last 38 years. And I have to tell you this, we are at our, really, the end if we don't win this election. This is it. And so it's critically important that we have the person who has the background, experience, and record of victory necessary to achieve our objective of defeating Tim Kaine and restoring the constitutional limits on the government and protecting us, protecting our kids, making sure that they're not subject to indoctrination, making sure that our economy thrives with no inflation, reversing the climate change agenda, securing the borders, and making sure our military is second. Many things to be done, and they need to be done quickly, and we need the ability to do it. I've had the good fortune of drafting legislation. I wrote a bill called the Access to Medical Treatment Act, which later became the Right to Try Act and was passed into law signed by President Trump. It would allow you to have access to an experimental drug without begging the FDA for approval. We have got to get our nation in a situation where it is no longer a demise of the last best hope for freedom on earth, but on a new era of freedom and prosperity. We have it within our power to do it. You know what? This election, we have to fight like we've never fought before. And we have to ensure that we have victory not only against Tim Kaine, but also against those in Washington who want to completely take our country into the status of a communist dictatorship. And that's what we really face. And if we don't act now and do what is necessary to save our country, we will lose it. So this is critically important, a serious moment. We have to get the right person to do the right job and ensure the survival and success of liberty in this country.
Thank you.
So, my name is Chuck Smith. Thank all of you for coming here, and certainly for inviting us. I practiced law for 45 years, and in that time, I've done a myriad of things. I practiced immigration law, divorce law, criminal law. I also practiced constitutional law. I've also practiced military law. And I agree with Jonathan that this is critical. We've got to get this right. We need someone with a background to deal with the myriad of issues that we face. Drug policy, economic policy and national debt, foreign policy, election integrity, energy independence, immigration policy and the border, inflation, January 6th. And to fix these problems, we have to have a plan. We've got to stop doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result somehow, thinking that just because someone wears a nice suit, he's going to be able to fix our problem. Just because he speaks well, he's going to be able to fix our problem. Just because he's practiced law, he's going to be able to deal with problems that affect the military. Just because he has military experience somehow, he's going to be able to handle the myriad of issues that are not only facing Donald Trump, than anyone else who steps out of the Democratic box. And if we don't get this right, this country, I think, is a world of grief. And so I bring to the table a lot of skills, a lot of talents. But I think most importantly, what I bring to the table is the ability to handle some of the toughest issues that we face, the border issues, as I indicated, immigration policy. Also to deal with the people in non-military who have lost their careers because of the mandates that were placed on them. I think the single most important issue we have is in fact the border, but a close second is our Constitution. They already told Donald Trump he has no constitutional rights under the Fifth Amendment, just because he's been accused of something and not formally charged with it, and of course he can't appeal without. I face all these issues head on, and I believe I am the best candidate for your United States Senate. Thank you all.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Eddie Garcia. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I'm going to take a different story. I'm not going to talk about the problems you just heard about. I'm going to talk about the solutions and how we win this election in 2024. Because we cannot win this election. We just can't improve our country. We can't build what I call a better tomorrow. And to do that, we're going to have a candidate. We're going to have a candidate who can run a campaign for 2024 to build the coalition that we're going to need in order to win. Tim Kaine hasn't lost a race in 30 years in Virginia. I can tell you, Republicans haven't won a U.S. in Virginia. Republicans haven't won a U.S. Senate race in Virginia in 22 years. So exactly right. If we keep running the same type of people with the same type of talking points that we've heard for 22 years, we're going to have the same top results. I'm a little bit different than the politicians that have come before you in the past. I'm a 22-year Army veteran. I'm a ranch hand, originally from South Texas near the Rio Grande Valley. I've spent 22 years of service to this nation. I've deployed in combat 6 different times. I retired out of the Pentagon, working on federal policy with the U.S. Senate, with the House of Representatives for our veterans and our military, for Gold Star families. I'm uniquely qualified for this position. I got a master's degree in legislative affairs from George Washington University. I know how the system works. I know how to operate. I've also been able to do that from outside the system, not within the system. So I'm not a lawyer. I don't have a lot of fancy degrees from some of the Ivy League universities. I'm a working man. I come from working people. If we're going to win Virginia, we got to have a message that speaks to everybody across 11 congressional districts. We got to have a turnout across the valley in the Southwest and Southside. We got to be able to reach the veterans in Hampton Roads and also speak to people here in Northern Virginia. I believe I have a well-rounded campaign with a well-rounded staff that's volunteers across all congressional districts, and together, if you stand with me, I guarantee you we can beat Tim Kaine come November. So I look forward to it. God bless you.
Well, I'm Scott Parkinson, and I'm fired up, ready to defeat Tim Kaine here in 2024. We know that Governor Youngkin gave us the blueprint to winning in Virginia. This race is about public safety and the illegal invasion along the southern border. It's also about parents' rights and public education, making sure we have school freedom and school choice. And it's also about the cost of living and the economic issues that are facing all of us. You know, Tim Kaine has been on the ballot 9 times. He's been in elected office for 30 years, and he's completely lost his way. He votes with Bernie Sanders 94% of the time. But I don't think that Virginia can afford 94% of socialism. We have to confront Tim Kaine's extremism, his radical positions that are just aligned with people like AOC and Bernie Sanders, not the blue dog Democrat that people thought he was in 1994. I've got the policy background. I've worked in public policy for 18 years. I worked for 3 United States senators. Then I was a senior staffer in the House of Representatives, working as the executive director at the Republican Study Committee. And then I was Ron DeSantis' chief of staff in 2018, when he won the most important race in 2018, the governor's race in Florida. For the past 5 years, I've worked at Club for Growth as our vice president of government affairs, working with members of the House and Senate to try to confront the Biden agenda. And you know what? We can defeat Joe Biden. Joe Biden
and Tim Kaine together, they're so unpopular right now in Virginia. We've got a governor with 58% approval rating. We know that 3 and 4 Democrats disapprove of Biden's handling of the economy. Sorry, 3 and 4 independents, 1 and 4 Democrats. And so together, that is going to be the winning coalition. I'm excited to share our message with you. The timer never started for me, so I get to keep going, right? That's okay. I think I was pretty close to 2 minutes. Listen, thank you guys. It's such a beautiful day outside. You guys chose to spend your Saturday afternoon with the 4 of us, and we're just excited to answer all your questions. God bless you all. Thank you so much. Little technical difficulties. With that red orange mic, just shut it off when I'm talking. Keep your sabotaging. Moving on. All right, first question, number 1, Timur. What makes you different from the other candidates? You got 2 minutes.
Well, unlike the other candidates, I've actually won. I have defeated the government, the deep state, the bureaucratic that is ruling this country. 3/4 of all federal law is not the product of those we elect. It's the product of 250 different agencies, bureaus, and departments. And in order to reform this government, you have to know how to defeat that deep state, which runs everything from the climate change agenda to the open border situation, everything in between. And so it takes the skill necessary, the education necessary to understand the details of the administrative agencies, how they work, and how they're depriving our rights. And I've spent 38 years fighting for rights and defeating them over and over and over again. I've gone up against the best attorneys the Justice Department has to offer, as well as those who were in the legal community who said that the decisions that I won against the government were impossible. And here's the key. This is also a critical talent that you need to defeat Tim Kaine. You have to be able to fight aggressively. We've got to win this thing. It's not an option. It's a necessity. And doing it requires the ability to pin Tim Kaine on every issue in detail and understand the details that underpin his radical leftist position. 94% of the time he votes with Bernie Sanders. So he advertises himself to Virginians as a moderate, but he's anything but. He's a far leftist. And so there's a problem here. He's misrepresenting who he is. So understanding how to defeat someone like that really does require a certain skill set. Understanding how to draft legislation necessary to save the republic also requires a skill set. I've written numerous pieces of legislation, one of which was signed into law by President Trump. You got to know what you're doing on the first day in office. This is critically important.
Thank you. We have another word. Timur said that he's the word that actually won. Tell us about your experience.
Good. So, listen, I can't say I won all of my cases, but I've tried a lot of cases. Been practicing law since 1979. I've won cases against the government. Who's the government? The state of Virginia, federal government. One case against the federal government. One case against the state government. I represent the real people, the criminal laws. I represent the constitutional laws. And in these cases, we have real people who go up. People may be losing their houses. People may be attacked. But in a lot of these cases, a lot of my clients have been attacked by people who crossed the border illegally. In a lot of these cases, people are fighting for their constitutional rights. What makes me different, why I think I'm the best candidate in this case, is I'm the only Marine up here. And I think it takes courage when you talk about being a Marine, because I enlisted Marine Corps at a time when people did not go to service in 1975.
I could rebuttal. Now, Ken, remember, if you guys mention somebody who mentioned your platform, I assume you guys have. So if you're gonna say that you have experience, then I'm gonna go ahead and start we actually want to hear the side, okay?
So I'll go again.
Moving on. Ms. Garcia, what makes you a better choice versus Tim Kaine compared to your opponents?
That's a great question. What's better for me compared to Tim Kaine? I would tell you, if anybody in here is looking for a lawyer to represent them, I wholeheartedly endorse any of my candidates. If you're looking for somebody to beat Tim Kaine, I believe that I'm your guy, because to beat Tim Kaine in 2024, we're going to have to be the exact opposite of who Tim Kaine is in 2024. And quite frankly, Tim Kaine is a lawyer who's been around DC for 30 years. The last thing we're going to need is another lawyer who's been around in DC for 30 years. We got to have somebody who's the exact opposite of who he is. While he's old and tired, I got to be young and energetic. While he caused a lot of these problems that we see, I got to talk about the solutions to those problems I believe that we have. While he represents Virginia 1994, I believe I represent what Virginia looks and sounds like in 2024. If we want to win young people, if we want to win veterans, if we want to win Hispanics here in Northern Virginia, we're going to need a candidate who can reach out to those communities. If we want the Valley and the Southwest, the farmers and ranchers to turn up, I'm the son of a ranch hand that's talking about working issues that affect them deeply, and I spent a lot of time down there. I'm the best position to beat Tim Kaine. We're going to need a clear contrast about the way things have been done as opposed to what can be done in the future. So I got a positive message. You're going to hear a lot of negativity up here, but it won't be coming from me. I believe that a better tomorrow is possible with a government that actually works for all of us, not just a few of us. And so we can do things as the federal government. We can secure our borders. We can strengthen our military. We can get our veterans off the streets and better mental health care in the VA system. We can save Social Security. We can keep seniors in their homes. We can do the basic things if we have people who can relate to the population of Virginia in 2024 in order to gather the coalition that we're going to need in order to show up and beat Tim Kaine. We have to be the exact opposite of it. I don't think you're going to find a clearer example of the past and the future when I'm standing next to him. It's going to be evident to you as conservatives and Republicans, but even independents and Democrats are going to know that Eddie Garcia represents the future.
Thank you. Once again, brought up some lawyers again. Tim Kaine is a lawyer, I have two lawyers over here. What do you say in response about lawyers?
Yeah, so President Reagan brought me to Washington, so I think it's appropriate to quote from President Reagan. I will not allow the issue of age to be one in this campaign. I'm not going to allow my erstwhile colleagues' youth and inexperience to be exploited. That's all I have to say. I think really experience matters. And in order to understand and be able to achieve, you really have to know the exact source of the problems. And in order to protect your rights, you have to understand exactly how to do that legislatively, and also understand the precise threats posed by the deep state. You know, you have no rights before administrative agencies. When you are called before an agency of the federal government, you're presumed guilty. If they take away your property or your rights, you know what? You don't have a right to a jury trial. You don't have a right against government discovery. In fact, they have general warrants. They call them unconstitutional under the Fourth Amendment. They can be used against anyone in the administrative state. In court, it's illegal, and in the administrative state, it's allowed. This is just part of the problem. We have to overcome this. We have to understand the details of it to do that.
Thank you. I would like to have this, we have the cameras up here, please stay to the time. The next one. The window requires the Republican to bring new voters to the party. How do you attempt to do that?
Well, I'm actually the youngest out of the five Pennsylvania ballot, just by a couple months. Listen, we do need to engage everybody from all communities to build this winning coalition. And it means we've got to pull together the MAGA voters and the Youngkin voters, America First, traditional conservatives, independents, the establishment. We've got to bring this unifying voice together and reach out and show up in all these communities. I've been showing up everywhere. I met with the Muslim leaders in Northern Virginia. I've met with African-American leaders all throughout our state as well. And I tell you, these people are a heck of a lot more conservative than we actually give them credit for sometimes. And when you talk to them about the public policy issues, that all of their families are facing, they are the forgotten, disconnected voters that we need to come after and tell them through the party of ideas why Republicans are actually better than these Democrats that are so extreme that they move so far to the left that these other folks don't have a political home anymore. Elon Musk has talked a lot about this. That when you've got the energy, the enthusiasm, and also the experience. I've also worked in government for 18 years. I've been working with the House and Senate, I've negotiated in the West Wing, the Roosevelt Room. I've got that experience negotiating with the Speaker and with the Majority Leader. So you need to have that because they're right. You cannot have a big learning curve. And also when it comes to fighting Tim Kaine head to head, he's got 30 years experience. And so I think that's a negative, right? He is somebody that has traditional and significant experience when it comes to the radical ideas he supports. This is a real opportunity for us to piggyback off of the momentum Glenn Youngkin gave us. Donald Trump is incredibly popular as well right now in Virginia. His team's invested in Virginia, and we're going to win.
Thank you. Chuck Smith, within the minority community, there's a large distrust in Republicans. How would you effectively gain their trust, and how do you differ from your other opponents?
So I'm glad you asked that question. I'm the only former chairman of the Republican Party. In fact, the largest Republican Party city in Virginia. Having been born on the 4th of July, I can talk to them about the values, our values, American values. I can talk to them about the things that are great about this country, the faith of this country. Black Americans or Hispanic Americans or Asian Americans, they're not looking for anything different from white Americans. They're looking for safe homes, safe schools. They're looking for a place to take their children to the playground and feel safe and be safe. Cricket is sort of a key aspect. You have to speak Spanish. My wife speaks Spanish. My children speak Spanish. I think going forward, we need someone who's going to stand up for the values that we have in this country. Too much crime on our streets, too much disorder on our streets, but we also have too much disorder within our party. Look at me. When you look at me, do you see the Marine? Do you see the Navy Jack Commander retired? Do you see the former chairman? Do you see someone more? These are ideas, I think, that resonate in all communities, not just white, not just black, but all of them. And I think outreach efforts in the black community, I think it's visible here, and not just here, in a lot of places go. How many blacks in our organizations, in our communities? I've been a Republican all of my life. I think black Americans want to hear that. I think Asian Americans want to hear that. They want to get value, they want to get purpose. And I think I bring that to the table from the Jump Street.
Mr. Garcia. We see a lot of distrust and a lot of rift happening across the nation. How would you handle the effects of anti-Semitism in college campuses due to the Palestinian-Israeli war?
Regarding our college campuses, there is a place in this nation based on the First Amendment of the Constitution to protest peacefully their government, their grievances. I wholeheartedly agree with that amendment. I've raised my right hand and sworn to defend it and protect it against all enemies, foreign and domestic, as written and amended. So that's where I stand on it. However, this blatant anti-Semitism that turns into violence on our college campus just cannot stand. Our children in these colleges are being led astray. They're being led astray by a progressive movement of activists that are outside the colleges, that are well funded from outside organizations. It's important that we should not only decry this type of behavior and this money, but also we need to investigate where these monies come from and who are behind the scenes that are pulling the strings. I'm an advocate of getting these large PACs and these non-accountable organizations and this dark money out of politics completely. We need to shed some light on this. I'm one of the only candidates that's not seeking a bunch of money from outside organizations right here in this Commonwealth in this election. I believe that we should have a government that comes from us. And if we don't have a government that comes from us, we end up having one that comes at us. And we can no longer stand by and watch our politicians being bought and paid for by these millionaires and billionaires that don't reside in the Commonwealth of Virginia, that bend over backwards to those who have a lot of money and the activist class. It's time that we as hardworking Americans across the Commonwealth stand up, speak up, show up for a candidate that reflects them and their values. And I stand against any anti-Semitism, whether it be on college campuses or anywhere else in the public space. So thank you.
Scott, you came forward with DeSantis. Obviously, you have a different approach down in Florida with these type of anti-Semitism and protests. Tell us how you handle this situation.
Thanks for the question. First of all, I think that you need to take away the student visas of anybody that's found violently protesting and rioting on these campuses. We know that that will also create a carrot and a stick when it comes to the incentives that the university and college system has right now. Those students are paying full tuition rates. They don't have access to Pell Grants. And I think that when there's a real pressure placed on these universities for real dollars that are going into their system, we can also look at their endowments, right? There's billions of dollars all on these Ivy League colleges and universities. And so follow the money, right? It's super important. Obviously, I stand with Israel. Israel has every right to defend itself. This was a terrorist attack by Hamas, which is different than Palestine. But we also need to make sure that we are confronting the terrorism and the brutality that's happening there. Joe Biden is politicizing the situation. He's withholding 500 and 100-pound bombs from Israel right now. And yet it's basically the same thing that he called for the impeachment of Donald Trump over when Trump talked about withholding some funding from Ukraine. So I think the Democrats are anything but honest. They're total hypocrites. And when it comes to this issue, we need to make sure that we stand with Israel. We need to confront anti-Semitism, and we need to also protect free speech and the right to peaceably assemble in these universities.
Humor. Many progressive left politicians have mentioned increasing the size of the Supreme Court from 9 to 12. What are your thoughts on increasing the size of the Supreme Court?
So I'm dead set against increasing the size of the Supreme Court. 9 seems to be the perfect number. We have had a long history with 9. 9 has worked well through days of glory and eras of strife in this country. When you expand the court, what you do is you increase the power of the legislature. What the Democrats really want to do is turn the court into essentially a lapdog for the legislature, so that the Democrat agenda in Congress can be upheld constantly by a court that is comprised of individuals that they allow into the court. 9 is perfect. 9 is working. We should not change the composition. And actually, I would be in favor of a constitutional amendment to keep that number 9. And in addition to that, we need to understand something else. We have experienced a epic now for the last 4 years of both the president and leaders, Democrat leaders in Congress, condemning the Supreme Court and threatening its independence, even to the extent of Chuck Schumer standing on the grounds of the Supreme Court and effectively begging for violent action against justices of the court. We've seen in the advent of the Dobbs decision, even in our own jurisdictions, justices' homes being protested against with very little police protection. Governor stepped in with regard to the justices with the state, but when it comes to the local jurisdictions, they did not provide protection. This is outrageous. We have to protect the independence of the judiciary. It's a key factor that the founding fathers intended in order to perform a check on the legislative and executive. Alexander Hamilton said that the court must be the guardian of the Constitution. And to do that, it cannot be subject to undue influence by the legislature or by the executive.
Thank you. Chuck Smith? And it didn't turn out that I actually, so everyone just picked a number out of the hat. So we not set up 2 doors on one side and not 2 doors on the other. But the way the questions are rolling, this is your question. Your thoughts on backing the Supreme Court with progressivists want to do from 9 to 12?
So that's a good question. I'm totally not in favor of that. And to the point of my colleague that doesn't like lawyers, we find out all the time, lawyers, so they really need us. If they get in trouble, who do they go running to? It's not the accountant, they come to the lawyers. But here's the deal, when I taught constitutional law at Regent University as an adjunct professor, I would tell my students, the Constitution is the software of the government. That elected officials go into a certain set of rules and regulations, they can function in those rules. It's not that we get the laws we want. It's not a perfect society. The court has 9 members, the court should have 9 members. And so, you know, in a constitution or a government governed by constitutional rules and regulations, the Supreme Court is the only unelected body that controls the interpretation of our laws. And when we take a good look at what's happening here, we know that elected officials, particularly Democratic elected officials, the first thing they want to do is get to the position where they can change our rules and regulations. They thought, still thinking, that the Fifth Amendment does not exist in the Constitution in the context of Donald Trump being allowed to be innocent until proven guilty. But this again is the software we have. Our job is not to take from the people, but to function within the laws that are set. I'll give you this nugget. The founding fathers only needed 10 amendments, not the 27 we have, only 10, and they functioned under those 10 amendments. Why is it that we need all these additional amendments, and even some recommended that we have an additional amendment? I'm standing by the fact that we don't need more laws. We simply need to enforce the laws that we have.
Thank you. Eddie Garcia, human trafficking is a $3 billion industry worldwide. $70 billion industry here in the United States alone. As U.S. Senator, how would you combat human trafficking, and why are you the best choice compared to your opponents on stage?
Human trafficking is a tragedy, and the biggest problem that we have regarding human trafficking is our southern border. President Trump asked 7 years ago for a 1,300-mile border wall, and Congress to include Republicans in the Senate and Republicans in the House for the ones that would not give it to them. They said we didn't have the money for it. That's a common theme that you're going to hear from Washington, D.C., is that there's never any money for you, your protection, or your kids, or your family, but there's plenty of money for the rest of the world's protections and their borders. And so the first thing we can do to combat human trafficking is secure our border with a 1,300 square mile wall that President Trump asked for. We can do that. We can do that as soon as we get in office. When I'm in the Senate and he's in the White House, we can do that. We can legislate our asylum laws that are currently being used against us. I disagree with just that. Our current asylum laws allow people from around the world to enter ports of entry and claim asylum, whether they actually are seeking asylum or not. They are using our laws currently against us. And so when President Trump was in office, he chose one of 2 options. You can either detain those asylum seekers or you can parole them. He chose to detain them first on our side of the border, and then he went to remain in Mexico. We've got to take it out of the hands of the executive, because when Joe Biden is in office, he just grants them parole and they come in, and that's how you get a lot of human trafficking that takes place. I'm uniquely positioned for this. I'm the son of South Texas. I grew up near the Rio Grande Valley. I'm married to a legalized immigrant from Latin America. We've gone through this immigration system. There's a message there for the Hispanic community here in Virginia that know good and well that the human trafficking criminals that come across end up in their neighborhoods, the fentanyl ends up in their neighborhoods, the kids that are unaccompanied end up crowding their public schools. I can make that argument better than anybody on this stage and anybody else running for this office. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott, same question. You gotta wait for it.
Yeah.
It's all right. How are you different from everyone else on the stage on combating human trafficking?
Listen, first of all, you have to back up President Trump on these policies. Trump says he wants to go after the cartels. And I think that there is an imminent threat from the cartels, and he has that executive branch authority right now when he's president, to go after the cartels. There's so much violence along the southern border, and there's also corruption. But there's also corruption in the United States Senate from people like Tim Kaine, right? Tim Kaine is a quid pro quo. He just took $8,000 from United Airlines in exchange for a letter that he wrote opposing the expansion of the plots and perimeters of DCA, right? He's taken money from Bob Menendez, who's under investigation, indicted because he took money from Egypt and the Qataris. And the trafficking situation is fentanyl in all of our communities. It's sex trafficking, and it's going from the drugs are going from China to our southern border to all across America. It's not just Arizona and Texas and California. So I think that you obviously have to use the power of the purse. There are existing laws on the books today where we can prevent the flow, the trafficking of people. I totally agree that we need to have the Remain in Mexico policy reinstated. Catch and release into America is a terrible policy. People have several years before their cases are adjudicated for their asylum claim. That's a real problem. And even here in Fairfax County, right, we had a illegal alien that was arrested for sexual assault of a young woman, a teenager, and Fairfax didn't honor the ICE detainer that was placed on him. He was released from custody against the request of ICE, and he sexually assaulted 2 more children before he was caught. This is a story that was in the news just about 2 weeks ago. And so it's happening all over the place. We can confront it with border security. That's what's necessary.
Thank you. Any more? In what ways as a senator would you engage with international partners and organizations to combat transnational human trafficking networks and support global anti-trafficking efforts?
Absolutely. Let me just say this. So I went down to the border in October, and the CBP chief there was explaining to me, among many other things, that sex trafficking has become an epidemic in the United States because there's virtually no restriction whatsoever on the cartels bringing in sex traffickers to this country. In this state, we have a massive sex trafficking problem. I represent 2 families whose children were sex trafficked in the Fairfax County Public Schools. And one was 12 years old, and she was trafficked out of the Rachel Carson Middle School. And she was gang raped in the janitor's closet of the school, and she was trafficked during the school day throughout Fairfax County, brought back and then put on the bus and sent home. They told her that we'll kill your parents, we'll kill your siblings if you breathe a word of it. She complained 32 times to school administrators without specifically saying what was happening, but she said, I need help. Over and over and over again, wasn't supplied. Let me just tell you this. We have got to do something in this state. We have sex trafficking all over the state. It's absolutely the top money earner for the cartels. I wrote legislation for Attorney General Mayorkas and asked him to introduce it to the legislature that would give the Attorney General of the state independent power from the Commonwealth's attorneys to prosecute sex trafficking cases. He doesn't have that power. I also have draft legislation which will amend the laws that pertain to sex trafficking on the federal level to provide capital punishment for sex traffickers, and then in addition, stiff penalties for those that aid and abet it, and then in addition, appoint a AUSA, Assistant United States Attorney, in each USA office around the country specifically dedicated to prosecuting these issues. We have to do this. It is a scourge on our country. It's unspoken of principally, but it is a massive problem here in Virginia and around the country, and we have to act strictly and with zeal in going after it.
Thank you. Doug Smith, what measures do you support in increasing the identification and rescue of trafficked victims, particularly marginalized communities?
Would you repeat the question?
What measures do you support to increase the identification and rescue of trafficking victims, particularly in marginalized communities?
So I'd like to answer that. I'd like to pose that question a little bit differently by focusing first on the difference between immigration and the border issue. All border issues are not immigration issues. Immigration means exactly what it says, to immigrate, to come in. People who come wanting to stay, people who come wanting to stay for a short period of time. Border issue is a sovereignty issue. A nation must have a border or it is not a nation. If we don't protect our border, and number one, build it, And number two, make sure that people stay in Mexico. If we don't protect our border, then we make every state along the way a border state. I am in favor of going further than Donald Trump. And that is to close down our border completely until we get closed out immigration completely until we get our border. Because the question often is, if you have water overflowing and overflowing a tub, do you turn the water off or do you unplug it, the bottom so the water can leave? I say you do both. As an immigration lawyer, I can certainly tell you that we need to stop all immigration in this country until we get our border fixed, because that is the only way we can keep Americans safe. I think as far as trafficking is concerned, we need to make sure that people who are held responsible go to jail. I'm always asked in groups, do we want to continue having policies where we slap the Democrats on the wrist, or we put people in timeout? No. People who violate our laws, no matter what those laws are, need to go to jail. And that's one of the ways that we fix our problems. I am totally in favor of having our military. In fact, just put all Marines if you want on our border. We will make sure that no one comes through our border that is not supposed to be in this country. That is the only way we maintain sovereignty, and that is the only way we can have an effective immigration policy.
Thank you. Mr. Garcia, crime is on the increase across the nation. What are your plans to help combat crime, specifically here in Virginia?
We have to support law enforcement. We are the party of law and order. We should be speaking out, standing up, and taking the back, not only financially, but rhetorically. We got to be speaking out in favor of our law enforcement. I have law enforcement friends and family. I got law enforcement folks that I know here in Northern Virginia. It's not easy. Maybe it was never easy to be law enforcement in this country, but today it's particularly difficult because we have a progressive left that is just intent in causing chaos in our neighborhoods. Who does that chaos affect? It affects the people that can least afford that chaos. It affects poor communities. It affects minority communities. Right here in Northern Virginia, everybody outside of Northern Virginia looks and pretends like everybody that lives up here is a multimillionaire living in Clifton or Great Falls and making a mansion behind a gated community, and that's not the case. We have a lot of people that are struggling. And in those communities, there's a lot of crime, and nobody's doing anything about it. Instead, they take our money, they take our blood, they take our troops and treasure, and they send it everywhere else to protect everywhere. They rebuild other nations. They build capital cities and crown princes' homes, and they give it to Russian oligarchs. They give it around the world. But when communities are struggling right here, 10 miles, 5 miles, 2 miles away from the center of our capital, no money can be found. No politician can ever show up and hold some of these people that are causing these problems accountable. And instead, they demonize our law enforcement. So when I get in office, not only are you going to have somebody that's looking for you, but you're also going to have somebody that can relate to you in the positions and situations that you come from, that can build a sense of unity again, and know that you're going to have one person in Washington, D.C. that doesn't come from a rich background and actually cares about the things you care about and want to stand up and fight and work for your communities.
Scott, the progressive left and Tim Kaine will attack you if you're senator-elect or nominated on gun control. What is your message to combat the rhetoric?
So I firmly believe that the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I'm a gun owner myself, and I think that guns actually protect our freedom, our families, and our property. And the Second Amendment means something to me. The entire Bill of Rights means something to me, right? The Democrats are coming after each and every single one of our Second Amendment rights already. Tim Kaine was the deciding vote last June on the pistol brace rule, right? So what Joe Biden did was he promulgated a rule requiring everybody to register their pistol braces, and if you didn't, you were a felon. This is a backdoor way of getting a national gun registry. What do you think the next step is? They've been coming after our First Amendment rights, our Fourth Amendment rights, right? They say, oh, we're not going to require a warrant to surveil the American people. That's unconstitutional, right? I oppose the FISA law. Due process, what's happening to Donald Trump? We have a two-tier justice system today. And what do you think is going to happen if we don't have the right to protect our property and our freedoms? Government is too big. And our founding fathers enshrined the Second Amendment in the Bill of Rights because they knew that it was a way for the people to ensure that the government remained a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. But Tim Kaine is a political oligarch. He's not accountable to each and every single one of us. When was the last time he was in Chantilly? When was the last time he was traveling around Virginia, meeting with Virginians, not going on junkets to South America? It was the last time he was up for re-election. So let's confront the dangerous rhetoric of people like Tim Kaine. I think that it's a safe position to protect and defend the Second Amendment. And I'm damn confident that all my points in the primary agree with that position. This is Republicans against Democrats for the gun control message because they're trying to control each and every single one of us. One other thing that I support is armed guards in the schools because that's
Thank you. He's actually only mic in control. We're gonna go to this next round. We do have food sponsored by Sandra Davis. Let's give a round of applause to Sandra Davis. We have this real quickly. And we're gonna support her in any endeavor she does. We're gonna go through a last round of questions here, take about 5 minute breaks so I can get some food, get some water, and then we'll get right back into it. Any more? What steps do you believe should be taken to reduce gun violence while respecting the Second Amendment rights?
So we have this massive crime problem in this country in no small measure because we have Soros-backed prosecutors that now dominate the Commonwealth's attorney's positions and prosecutor positions around the country. They cover 80% of the population. They're in favor of defunding the police. They're in favor of completely destroying our criminal justice system. They believe in no incarceration for criminals. They favor no catch bail. This is a disaster. It's a planned destruction of the United States. George Soros is an enemy of the United States, and we have to change the law and focus the law in order that he not get away with this plan to completely destroy our criminal justice system. So, first order of business, we need to enforce the Hobbs Act against both prosecutors and the Soros organization for essentially a quid pro quo bribe situation. They are financing people like Buddha Bibrai and like Steve Descano in Fairfax County in order that they will pursue an agenda of not prosecuting criminals. Steve Descano has been in there for 6 years, and in the course of his entire term, he's not prosecuted a single sex trafficking case. He's left sex traffickers on the streets. That's just one example. This leads to massive increase in crime. So we're going to enforce the Hobbs Act, which says that you cannot have a quid pro quo relationship with someone where you bribe them, like Soros does with these guys, to get them to avoid fulfillment of their oath of office or their legally responsible duties. The second thing we're going to do is enforce the criminal RICO laws and expand them to reach the whole Soros operation, which is really designed to encourage open borders, defunding the police, anti-incarceration prosecutors. We've got to do this to save our country. The last thing we need to do is to ensure that we stop this fissure, this open border situation. What are we going to do? We're going to make it we're going to amend the asylum laws so that if you put 1 foot into the United States and seek asylum, you'll be permanently barred from American citizenship. You're going to have to go to the United States Embassy in your country of origin or an adjacent United States Embassy to seek asylum in the United States.
Thank you.
We're going to move all the immigration judges to the embassies. No processing here in the United States.
Thank you. Speaking with crime, Mr. Chuck Smith, how would you handle, as senator, the ever-affecting issues of fentanyl in our country?
Close our borders. Take China away from sending people in the United States with fentanyl trafficking, drug trafficking, hold people accountable. We have to stop making excuses for bad behavior. Fentanyl is killing more people. In fact, there's been a study that a small amount of fentanyl, which currently crosses our border, has the potential to kill more people in the United States. We need to get control of this. Not only is this a border issue, but this is also an issue with our prosecutors. This catch and release policy with illegal immigrants is one thing, but the failure to prosecute is another. We have people in Northern Virginia, we have people in my home state who are committing crimes, but the prosecutors don't want to prosecute them. I think we need a policy like the one where if someone sets in motion something, and that something that they set in motion causes harm to someone else, they are liable. We have that policy. We're drinking too much in bars. It allows you to drink, and you go out and hurt someone, and you can be held responsible. Likewise, I'm a prosecutor. Fails to prosecute either an illegal immigrant or fails to prosecute someone in an identical crime situation, and that person harms or hurts an American, there should be liability against that prosecutor. We need to get control of this country. And I think one of the ways we do that is to create situations where people have not only rights, but they also have the government's protection. I think I want to say this, move away. The constitutional right to bear arms, a constitutional right of person, these rights, along with this spot is right, these rights exist whether or not it rains, whether it snows. The job of us, people who are running for elected office, is to function within the software that we get too often and let the people want to get to office and do something different.
Thank you. Ms. Garcia, what role do you believe the federal government should play in supporting local law enforcement agencies and communities in efforts to prevent and combat crime?
Well, in general, I believe that the federal government should stay as far away from any local issue as possible. So that's first and foremost. I think that our federal government has expanded itself way too far, way too many places that it has no business in. So we need people in DC that are interested in pushing as much power and money and control as possible down to those local governments. And when it comes to money, when it comes to law enforcement, we got to fund our law enforcement. We got to support the people, again, not just financially, but rhetorically. You got to be able to stand with people. We got people here, we got politicians that seem like they got disdain for working people. They got disdain for people in communities that don't have any money because they can't donate to campaigns or they can't protest and mass. And so we tend to get overlooked further and further. The little guy gets smaller and smaller, and the government keeps growing and growing. Who's going to stand up to these people? I'm telling you, it's going to take somebody who's not been a part of that system. 22-year Army Ranger who comes from outside the system, who knows what it's like to have the odds stacked against him, but he's still pushing on behalf of what's right. And so when I get in office, I'm going to be pushing for what's right. What's right is law enforcement, safe communities, safe public schools for our kids. We got a government right now that can't do the simple things. It can't secure our borders. It can't provide protection to our kids in schools. It can't keep our seniors in their homes. It can't keep veterans from ending up homeless and committing suicide in mass numbers. We have to reprioritize our federal government to focus on the things they should be doing, the things that we want them to do. The biggest problem we have in our party right now is the Republicans in Washington, D.C., these elected officials, they don't even promise to do anything for us anymore. They just stand up and tell you all the things they're not going to do, they're going to stop, and they're not going to fund. It's time to have a government that actually does the things that we want to do. Get us out of the rest of the world's business and start focusing on the homeland, building jobs and opportunity right here. And what you see when you see people with more jobs, you'll see less crime. Thank you.
All right, we're going to break for 5 minutes, let them get some water in their throats, and please, we have some food donated by Sandra Davis. Be back in 5 minutes. Please bring the food here. Sit down with your food. Thank you. Food is in the next room, next door.
Yeah, see, he's the man of the people. Yes, he is. That's the one thing that sets him apart from everybody else. I know, but I'm from Puerto Rico. There's a saying: if you're a hammer, everything you see is nails. Congress is full of lawyers. Do we need more water in the ocean? No. We need diversity of thought and experience. Good. So Monday, you can go there are different places to start voting. We have until 18 June. So go Monday, cast your ballot, and here in this building they start 18. Okay.
crazy.
So.
Break? Yeah. Was it 15 minutes? 5 minutes. Coming right back.
Alright, so there's a.
3 minutes.
It's 2 hours.
Yeah, but it's, he has if we turn it down.
Okay, I just wanted to.
Yeah, good side.
That's the only one.
Yes, you're welcome.
That's crazy.
All right, let's start taking our places again. Start wrapping up, taking places.
No, it's funny, man, I hope you can see it, because I looked it up and it was fucking see it, I'm like, okay. And then, I gotta say something.
My wife is from Spain.
Yeah. So my grandparents originally, they came, one set came from Italy.
Thirty more seconds, we're gonna get started. 30 more seconds. Now, it's really loud. This is based off of live stream. So our live stream is going out right now, and we need to make sure that everything's. It's a little bit louder for you guys. That's why.
I'm listening to it also.
All right, Karen, stay your seat. Mr. Garcia. We expect more from the military man. All right, team. We're gonna go live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, welcome back. Hope everyone got that food. Once again, thank you, Sandra Davis, who ran for school board at large. Please support Sandra Davis in all her endeavors. She's a phenomenal candidate and a phenomenal person too. All right, Ms. Ferguson, as U.S. Senator, how would you get other legislators on board with securing our border?
So I have worked for 3 U.S. senators, and I know the precedent, the rules, the procedure that's necessary to extract concessions from other senators. And they have something that's known as a hold, right? You can hold up other people's priorities that are totally unrelated to what the underlying legislation is, and you can actually have that political horse trading to do the things that are really, really important. So one example would be if somebody from Iowa had priorities for their district court judge nominations, you can hold that up and you can say, you know what, we need to fund our border security before I'm gonna allow for your judicial nomination to move forward. This is a priority for you, this is a priority for me. And you negotiate directly with these people. You have to understand what's important to the other senators. And they gotta understand what's important to us. We are gonna be elected on an electoral mandate that is America First message. And I think all across America, when it comes to the cost of living, when it comes to the illegal immigration invasion, and when it comes to our public education system, there's a real movement behind us with the American people. And it transcends partisanship. These are issues that everybody can get behind. So I think that it's common sense. And you know what else? You got to filibuster the must-pass legislation. So when they bring up the FAA reauthorization, you can filibuster that in order to extract the concessions necessary to actually get the reforms that will make a difference. I've got that experience. I want everybody to know on day one, there's not going to be a really big learning curve for me. Right? I can get in there. I know my way around the Capitol. And that experience is necessary. This is like a job interview. And so I want everybody to understand, Tim Kaine is not going to be accountable for each and every single one of you. I will be. When I hand out my business card, I've handed some out to you folks today. It has my personal information on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, you were talking about deportation. We talked about deportation already. What would you propose we do with the hundreds and thousands of undocumented immigrants that have lived here for some decades and now have children that are U.S. citizens?
Okay, so these individuals are here illegally, and we have now a two-tiered system of justice in this country. So we have 20 to 30 million people in this country who are here illegally, cannot lawfully work, working in an underground economy. They're receiving money under the table, they're on construction sites, retail, and so forth. We owe it to the American people, and we also owe it to legal aliens, that we uphold the rule of law. We can't have a two-tiered system of justice. We can't excuse illegal entry into this country. We are going to have to deport people who are here illegally. And here's the situation. If we don't do this, if we condone an illegal population in this country, we will never get this right. And we're also going to be taking away from the rights of American citizens and those who are here legally, who did the right thing, who are either here because they were born here lawfully under the 14th Amendment and are citizens, or because they came through the system. So we can't have a two-tiered system of justice. We can't keep excusing illegality without incentivizing illegality. Another thing I can mention very quickly. In addition to that policy that I mentioned, the law that I mentioned, that would stop people from changing the asylum laws and stop them from entering this country, I believe we need block grants to the border states willing to defend this country to hire the National Guard and police necessary to police the border. And in addition to that, what we need to do is to eliminate the incentives for illegal entry. Because right now, this administration is taking every asylum seeker who comes in. They're signing them up for welfare, they're signing them up for food stamps, they're signing them up for Medicaid, they're giving them cash. A family of four is $3,000 in cash. And they are enabling them to fly anywhere they want in the United States. We have got to stop this. We have to reverse the direction, and people have to know when they're thinking about coming here that they have to do it legally.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, same question. So we have hundreds of thousands of people that's already been here, having for decades. Kids now. That have kids now are U.S. citizens. What are your stance? Is the same as Mr. Emor, or do you have a different opinion?
Well, I'd like to know if I can get a different question because Mr. Emor took my answer. Maybe because we're the only two lawyers. We have to get a full-time process. If I were to break into your house and steal, take some meat and begin to eat it, and I'm caught, do I get to finish eating the meat? Or if I break into your house and take a stove with me and it's on my back as I'm coming out, please catch me. Some of this one. Extra minutes. And the police catch me. Do I get to keep the refrigerator? We have to stop providing incentives for people who do the wrong thing. We have a front door, we don't have a back door. Our front doors when people come to this country, and the answer to your question is we have to enforce our laws. As painful as this may be, you cannot break into our home illegally and then turn around and say, I have a child, he has a cousin, an uncle, and that's why I should stay. That's a benefit. If we teach that we're going to stop giving benefits, stop providing driver's licenses, stop giving medical cards, stop the things that we're providing incentives for people to remain in this country, we will get our immigration system on the whole. I do feel that I answered this question already, but the water at the top. We have to get a Wall Street. We cannot continue allowing water to overfill while we're trying to enforce our immigration laws. There's no way we can catch up with that. As Mr. Emor said, we have to stop providing these incentives. The people must be deported.
When it comes to immigration policy, what are the main distinctions between your position and how you believe the opponent's approach would impact immigrants and the nation as a whole?
Well, when it comes to immigration policy, first and foremost, the immigration policy and the border security policy, they go hand in hand, they're not exactly the same. And so to pick up where I left off last time, we have to secure the border first and foremost. You can't do anything until you do that. We have to legislate remain in Mexico. We have to triple the number of strong conservative asylum judges appointed by the new president in the White House, Donald J. Trump. That way we can increase the processing of these people who have already come here and falsely claimed asylum, and which we know are the vast majority of them. And then once we do, because of the laws that currently exist, we deport them back to where they came from. And then we start to talk about immigration. We start to talk about what type of immigrants do we want in this country? Who do we need? Because we are short so many people. I can tell you right now, we're short dramatically healthcare practitioners here in America. We got 1,000 different counties across America that don't have a single primary care manager. If you care about that, we need to import these people who have the skills that we need in order to help grow this economy and help our seniors get the health care they need. For instance, this country is short right now 3,000 OBGYNs. So if you're a woman out there, if you care about women's health care, we're short OBGYNs right now. There are people, there are immigrants that would love to come to America and achieve the American dream and get involved in some of these areas in which we're short. We have to start to prioritize that. Again, I repeat myself because politicians in DC are continuously ramble on about problems that exist, but they never solve anything. I will tell you, here's one of the reasons why, in my opinion, because it's been mentioned a couple times. Here in America, we only have 2% of Americans that is represented government that actually practice law, but 63% of our politicians are lawyers right now. And I think that's a big problem. Since we keep bringing it up, I'll go ahead and give that stat to you. We need regular people in office. Not everybody can practice law and be a lawyer. Thank you.
Scott. We know that Tim Kaine and Progressive Left will use abortion as a campaign weapon towards whoever is nominated as a GOP candidate. What is your plans to counter the narrative?
We have to use the weapon against Tim Kaine. He is the actual extremist, right? Tim Kaine's position on abortion is abortion all the way up to birth and after birth, which is known as infanticide. It's the same position that Governor Ralph Northam had. And I think that that's a radical position. I'm not going to shy away from the fact that I have 4 beautiful children and I was there for their births and that I'm a pro-life conservative. And Tim Kaine's out there and said, well, I want to codify Roe. So he believes that there is a federal role for abortion. And you know what? My federal role in abortion is that we're going to defund Planned Parenthood. How can we allow to fund abortion after the Dobbs case says that abortion shall be returned to the people's elected representatives? That's exactly what it says. And the precedent prior to Roe was that the states would decide. So of course, I think Virginia and Oklahoma, New York, California, Alabama, they're all going to have different laws at the state level as the number of weeks or what exceptions that they allow for. But why are we going to allow the Democrats to continue their march toward abortion rights at the federal level? We need to take the fight to them, expose them for the extremists that they actually are. And I don't think that happened in 2023. They outspent us in Virginia 20-1, and we barely lost. Bill Wolf in Prince William County. Now the flag got me. What happened? Bill Wolf lost by less than 2,000 votes in Prince William County. And we had 2 delegate races that were less than 1,000 votes each, despite being outspent. I don't think the Democrats are going to win this race on abortion. The race comes down to the cost of living in the economy, the illegal immigration invasion, and parents' rights.
What is your stance on abortion? How do you plan to balance the rights of women and other considerations, such as the fetal right and public opinion?
So the founding fathers, of course, understood abortion, and they left this issue to the states. Dobbs got it right. There is no delegated power. Our Constitution is one of delegated powers. There's no delegated power on the issue of abortion. There's no constitutional right related to abortion in the Bill of Rights. They left it to the states. Dobbs got it right. So the question then becomes, let's get rid of this political football of abortion. We've got to get rid of it because women deserve better. This whole thing of denying women fully informed consent when they have an abortion, denying women information related to abortion, is really a crime. Women deserve better. They deserve better in the state. Now, I happen to be pro-life. I do believe that life begins at conception. But I'm also a constitutionalist. And I understand in this federal office, there is no power over this question for any of us. But on the state level, let me tell you this. We have a state house that is dominated by those who agree with Senator Kaine that abortion should be allowed all the way up to the time of birth and even after infanticide. But what we really have been focusing on is separating this from being a binary choice and making it a choice among 3 options. Adoption. We need to introduce state legislation on the state level to eliminate the regulatory impediments to adoption. Adoption should be ubiquitous in every gynecologist's office and family planning center, obstetrician's office. They ought to be able to make adoption fully available to anyone who cannot raise a child so that they're not stuck in this position of having to consider abortion or affording the cost of raising a child all the way through. And in addition to that, we need fully informed consent. What does that mean? That means that women need to understand that abortion is not risk-free. Some women will be sterile from abortion, some women will suffer difficulty with pregnancy, and we need this fully informed consent. If you care about women, that's what you do in this state. We need it now.
Chuck Smith. Now, what measures do you support to reduce the number of unintended pregnancies and promote alternatives?
This is a very important question. I think we should all pay attention to it. When we're talking about the abortion issue, the problem with adoption as an answer is that the mother in these cases does not want to have a child. It's not that she doesn't want to take care of the child. She does not want to give birth to a child. Even if she turns back to a child and that child will go somewhere else, she doesn't want to be in that situation. I think for us, listening to this question, Igor is right. And on this one issue, he's wrong on the other issues, I believe. He's right on this one issue. And that is that we will face this question, even though we as United States senators have no say-so in this whatsoever. The Hobbs have taken it away from the federal government. It is a state issue, and for those happy Democrats who want all the exceptions, those are already plugged in. But they won't leave us alone. They want to know. And we'll pin your United States senator. How you feel? What is your personal position on abortion? And that question is merely asked to take that senator down to show that he or she is incredible. Let me tell you how incredible I am. I believe that if it comes on my desk or funding's on my desk, I believe in life there is no exception to that question. The problem we face is that we play into the Democrat mode. Where mothers say, "Oh, this is my body. You can't tell me." That's a false narrative. It's your two bodies, and that second body is a human being and has constitutional rights. And just because you want to step on that person's constitutional right, you can't do that. For example, there's no constitutional right to violate the law. There's no constitutional First Amendment right for you to step and exercise your constitution. You cut me off. I'm supposed to sit down.
You want to on that? Any more?
Yeah, thank you so much. So let me just say this. I explained that I believe that life begins in conception, but I'm also a constitutionalist, and I understand that there is no federal power. What does that mean? There's no federal power in this question. That means that the federal government has no constitutional power to fund Planned Parenthood. It also means that the federal government has no constitutional power to enact the erstwhile senator from South Carolina's bill that would ban abortion nationwide. There is no such power. This is an issue that has to be decided in the states. But because it has to be decided in the states, and we now have a Democrat-controlled legislature, the governor of this state, I think, to save lives of the unborn, should be working vigorously to get adoption as a serious alternative. And if it is seriously available, right now, most people who seek adoption go overseas. If it were seriously available for deregulation, we would see a substantial number of babies alive rather than aborted in this state.
Thank you. Moving on. This question. Our schools have been overtaken by the progressive left, especially here in Northern Virginia. What is your plan to help support the stop of the assault on parent rights?
I pledged day one to introduce a bill for universal school choice. I believe that every federal dollar that comes out of Washington, D.C. that's meant for the education of that child should go into the hands of the bank accounts or the pockets of the parents of that child, so that those parents are empowered with the control and the money that they can educate their children how, when, and where they see fit. There will be a lot of different solutions for a lot of different families, and that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. I think, to your point, Tony, that we as conservatives, as Republicans, we're going to continue to chase all of these issues in our public school system, whether it's bathrooms, whether it's curriculum, whether it's boys and girls sports and the Title IX issues. We're going to chase them to the ends of the earth because there's no limit to where the progressive left will go. The only way out of this is universal school choice that encourages parents to homeschool their children should they choose to. And what you'll see is families that grow stronger. You'll see kids that are more well adjusted and prepared for the future. What you're going to see is competition in the market, and you're going to see an improved education system across the entire nation. What you're also going to see is the public education that's left. Instead of classrooms with 25 and 26 kids, they're going to be down to about 12 or 13 kids. And those kids are going to get more one-on-one time with the teachers. They're going to have more adult supervisions with the counselors. They're going to be less drugs and less distractions. They're going to have a better quality of education as well. We have to take the power out of Washington, D.C. We have to put it in the hands of the parents. That's the way that you do it. And when we do this, we can position ourselves as a country, as communities, to grow and to prosper and to take care of one another. And that includes those parents who have kids that have IEPs and special needs. That money should go into the pockets of those parents so they can find the right people to help educate their children and to find out what's best for them.
Scott, you come from Florida with Governor DeSantis. Very unique situation down there. Same questions. How would you help Virginia when this progressive left? And how is your assault on parent rights?
So the parents' rights movement is incredibly important, and it was basically here in the epicenter of Northern Virginia. I've lived here since 2009, and I was Ron DeSantis' chief of staff in 2018 when he ran for governor. Was down there in Florida, helped him win, deputy executive director of his transition. But then I came back to Arlington because I'm not going to go to Tallahassee. Tallahassee's not Florida. It's like South Alabama. Y'all got to know the business. You know, it's just not the same. But I strongly support universal savings accounts, educational savings accounts. Arizona had a fantastic school choice bill that passed last year. That is the gold standard, I think, for school freedom in America. But the federal dollars is only about 10% of K through 12 educational funding. And then the states and local governments fund the rest. So while we're going to fight for legislation to abolish the Department of Education and empower parents, we know that there's more to be done with the states. So I'm going to try to be the voice in Washington, D.C. You have to sometimes use the bully pulpit, not just the legislative pen, to make a difference. And we see the radical left do it all the time when they try to advance their Green New Deal agenda, things that are totally unconstitutional. I'm not trying to advance unconstitutional things, but we can argue about them from the federal level for the states to adjudicate. And right now, Virginia actually has a pretty good public education system. But the problem is that it's getting away from math and science and reading and U.S. history, and instead it's focusing on wokeism and indoctrination of students. We recognized it, and during COVID, I saw the virtual learning while my daughter was in school, and it was terrible. They're not talking about the reading of arithmetic. You know, I think we're going to get back to the basics, encourage the states to do that. We need to be a voice to champion that with our state legislation.
Sticking with schools, with the rise in criminal activity, how can you enhance school safety or support enhancing school safety?
So the best thing we can do for school safety is to get rid of the gun-free school zones. If you want an invitation to commit an act of atrocity without opposition, you take away the Second Amendment rights of people. Now, what we want to do is this. We need to protect the Second Amendment rights of people, and so that they can have a weapon and protect themselves even in the school environment. You know, the Second Amendment was designed to provide us with the ability to defend ourselves and also to join the militia to defend a free state. We have to stand foursquare in favor of that. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to introduce legislation that will create nationwide constitutional carry. I'm going to preempt local and state laws that prevent you from having the right to bear arms and having the right to join a militia. We are going to protect that Second Amendment right, which is the foundation for all of our rights. Because if you cannot defend yourself against abuses of government, and you cannot defend yourself against crime, then you will perpetually be a victim. Combine that with the defund the police movement, and you've got a real crisis, and that's what we're seeing all over the United States, massive rise in crime. In addition to that, we need to do this. We need to attack the Soros-backed prosecutors, as I mentioned before. And then the last thing that we need to do, in the case of the schools, we need true school choice. We need to enable individuals to leave a school and take the federal dollars with them and go to the school of their choice. But we don't want to just do that. We want to also revise the schools that are left behind this way. So it's a push-pull situation. We're going to cut off federal funding for those schools that are engaged in practices that reinterpret Title IX and allow biological males to go in girls' and women's sports and bathrooms and locker rooms. This is an invitation to sexual abuse of women, and it's a destruction of their academic opportunities. We're not going to allow that to happen. We're also going to get rid of critical race theory by enforcing the Equal Protection Clause against the states. In each instance, we'll cut off federal funding. And we're also going to end this nonsense of gender fluidity instruction and get rid of this indoctrination, which is ruinous to our kids.
Thank you. And final question on schools. As you know, our school board is kind of near to my heart. As senator, how would you give back and help out local elections in regards to school board people running for school board?
Well, I think the main focus here is to remind our schools that parents control the schools. The parents are in charge of the children. I think we've gotten to a position where the administrators and the teachers somehow think they are in charge. These are our children who are going to these schools. These are our tax dollars which are going to these schools. These are our programs that we pay for on the state level going to these schools. I believe it's time to remind these schools that as the United States Senate, if you're not going to allow parents to be back in charge, you're going to have policies where parents at their school board meetings are being arrested, or being detained, or treated as domestic terrorists, then we at the federal level will withhold any funding to that particular school or those particular schools that do not treat and respect parents. I think that's just basic. We cannot have parents being treated as second-class citizens on policies that are affecting their children.
Moving on to national defense. Garcia, what measures would you support to enhance national security and addressing the emerging global threats?
National security is something that's near and dear to my heart. I've spent 22 years in service in the United States Army. I deployed to combat 3 times to Iraq, 3 times to Afghanistan. I spent 8 years in the special operations community in Europe, looking at Russia and the potential of Russian aggression. So what's happening around the world right now is right in my alley. I would tell you that here in Virginia, it's important that we have a senator who sits on the Foreign Relations Committee and the senator that sits on the Senate Armed Services Committee that currently Senator Kaine sits on. I will tell you right now, and you have to be blind not to be able to see that foreign relations is a mess in our national security apparatus. Our armed forces are degraded. I blame that on individuals just like Senator Kaine. So I think I'm uniquely positioned once we get into the Senate to fill that seat on those 2 committees and help get America out of these foreign wars that we have spent trillions of dollars in treasure and start to, thank you, absolutely. We got to stop funding these wars that are unwinnable because of the lobbyists and the special interests that encircle Northern Virginia, quite frankly. It's time that we start focusing on Americans. We have people right now that are struggling. We have veterans that are sleeping on the streets, that are committing suicide. We have seniors that are being priced out of their home. We just talked about the degradation of our school system and our border is a humanitarian crisis. But we have people in DC that will continue to send trillions around the world, and meanwhile, here in our own homes, there's never any money. You can't do anything for us for some reason. I believe it's time for a change. Someone from my background who spent a lot of time in uniform, I'll be honest with you and tell you that we're in a lot of places around the world that we should not be. I don't want to continue to police the rest of the world when our homeland is really. And so I believe that we can only be strong internationally once we are strong domestically. So we need jobs and opportunity here for our communities before we ever go try to rebuild another country.
Scott, what is your opinion of foreign policy, including relations with key allies and adversaries, and promoting American interests abroad?
This is like a 10-minute answer. 2 minutes for that question. First of all, I have a world uniform, but I'm grateful to people like Eddie and Chuck and Hung Pao that did. And if that means they each get an extra minute, so be it, they've earned it. And honestly, their service to America is incredibly important. Everybody here that is a veteran, God bless you all, and have active duty. Go back and pray for our troops and men and women that are serving courageously. When I think about foreign policy, when I think about foreign policy and U.S. national security, I'm an America First concern. And for me, that means that we need to take care of our men and women here and the investments in U.S. national security before we get into these forever wars like Iraq and Afghanistan, or wars that really shouldn't involve the U.S. because there's no strategic interest, like Ukraine. Ukraine is not in NATO. I would rather see stronger leadership at the rest of the desk that can confront that with a coalition outside of NATO, right? Donald Trump did that. Right? We were relatively peaceful from 2017 to 2021. And so when you think about the $180 billion that has gone over to Ukraine, wouldn't it be better if that money was directed to shipbuilding in Hampton Roads in Norfolk? And so I want to see those investments here in our own national security because that protects our sovereignty. But the greatest threat to our national security is actually our national debt. Economic security is national security, and the net interest payments on the debt will exceed our national defense budget for the first time ever this year. Over $1 trillion just to service the 34.6 national debt. That's totally unacceptable. It's unsustainable. We need to limit government to the constitutional obligations of the federal government, which includes national security first and foremost.
What would you consider the greatest threat to national defense? And how does your experience make you better than the other candidates that you're running against today?
So it's a constitutional function of the commander-in-chief to protect the nation. We have a commander-in-chief who appeases our enemies and does not defend the interests of the United States, and actually facilitates our enemies' destruction of our country through this open border policy. Understanding the constitutional requirements, and that indeed defense is an essential element of a constitutional republic, and that it is not something that the chief executive can ignore or not fulfill. When it comes to our national defense, this is what we have to recognize. We just had an appropriations bill that cut out federal funding for 2 new nuclear aircraft carriers that are absolutely indispensable to our defense against the greatest threat to the United States, the communist Chinese, and the vast expansion of communist China throughout the world. We have to do a number of things to get our military to be second to none, and a peace through strength agenda is essential. Recognize that Donald Trump was one of the strongest presidents we have had in recent time. He was not a person who had military experience, but what he did have is vast common sense, and he understood fundamentally what it meant to be commander-in-chief, and he exercised that power so as to project American strength, not weakness. And this president is doing the opposite. We have a spare parts shortage. We have a massive spare parts shortage. We need to fix that. In addition, we need 165 nuclear attack submarines. We have the greatest technology for submarines in the world, and we're not advancing that, and that would protect us substantially against the vast expansion of the military of the communist Chinese. We need to recognize communist China is not, as Biden says, a strategic competitor. They're an active enemy of the United States that is infiltrating every aspect of American society. Not just academics, but also our military is infiltrated, and also our governments. And they're working actively to destroy us and to take all of our intelligence and use it for military purposes against us. So we need to force their divestiture of both business and agriculture in America and treat them as they should be, recognizing them as an enemy, not as a strategic enemy.
Mr. Smith, China is considered one of the biggest threats to national security. It keeps on infiltrating our society and challenging our domestic values. What should be done to better protect our community, especially here in Virginia?
I think we need to do what Donald Trump has done, what Donald Trump preaches. You want America to be safe, then we must make America first. Donald Trump said the greatest threat to national security is ourselves. And by that he meant, if we continue to allow our borders to be invaded, drug trafficking, human trafficking, sex trafficking, illegal immigration, allow foreign policy to give in to China flying, there were no balloons flying over the sky in China when President Donald Trump was president. We didn't have a lot of the things that we see happening in the world today. I take you back to a time when I was in elementary school. We would hide under our desks. They would sound the buzzer, and we'd hide under our desks. They sound the buzzer again, and we'd hide on the desks. They come across a loudspeaker. This is the drill. This is the drill. You know what's happening? We were practicing as if there were a nuclear threat, and what we as children were doing in our schools. Remember the time? That was the time when we had the Cuban Missile Crisis. And that crisis was, President John Kennedy said, Russia, you will not put missiles in our backyard in Cuba. And we threatened to go to war. It was doomed to be World War III. Donald Trump understood that with regard to Russia. That's why Russia did no invasion under Donald Trump. Russia said, and it said, you will not put Ukraine in NATO to put missiles in our backyard, because that considers the war. We need to have the United States Senate, number one, is going to follow the policy of Donald Trump, but he's going to understand what's going on with our military. We cannot, as the United States, be the world's policeman. We don't have enough military power. But you mess with us, and I use another word other than that. You mess with the United States, and you will see the full power of the evil. Other than that, I think we need to follow policies that make sense. Donald Trump had it, Donald Trump knew it, and I will support this policy.
Thank you. When you look at the economy, Ms. Garcia, how would you strengthen our economy and create more opportunities for all Americans, particularly in light of recent challenges?
The biggest driver of economic growth in this country is an all-American energy policy that I'm proposing. We have to get jobs and opportunity back today and also prepare ourselves for the jobs of the future. And so we can't sacrifice the future for today, like so many want to do. We can't sacrifice the day for the future like the progressive left want to do. I propose an all-American energy policy that uses the natural resources, the fossil fuels that exist today and under American grounds that can be dug up by American hands all across this country. We can do that. We can put people to work. Simultaneously, we have to start moving towards a nuclear energy policy. Here in Virginia, Virginians can lead the way. Thank you so much. Virginians can lead the way. We have 2 nuclear power plants right now. We have Lake Anna, we have Surrey. On a relatively small footprint, we power a third of the Commonwealth's energy through those plants. We can duplicate that across 48 lower states that are interconnected, that can put millions of people to work for the next 30 years. It's going to take 3 decades to build something like that, but you have to start right now. We should have started 30 years ago, but we've had a DC class that has been sold out to special interests that continuously keep us in foreign lands over foreign oil in order to power our infrastructure here in America. It's time to reverse that. If you care about the environment, and I do, we need a green solution, a nuclear green solution for the future. That's how we win people who put the environment first. Republicans, conservatives, we're the ones who grow crops. We're the ones who live off the land. We want a good environment as well. If you care about getting us out of these foreign conflicts, we need to get off foreign oil and gas. A nuclear energy plant does that. If you care about jobs and opportunity, if you care about Social Security, we need people into the workforce, paying into these things so they can sustain and we can help our seniors. All of this matters, and it's going to take somebody who can articulate these issues and relate it to the people in Virginia in order to win this election and then pass these laws.
Thank you. Ms. Martin, in regards to trade, how would you balance the interests of domestic trade in comparison to international trade?
So I'm a free market economic conservative. Free markets have provided more wealth and prosperity than any other economic system in the history of the world. And we need to embrace that. We need to have bilateral trade agreements directly with our trading partners, not these big agreements like NAFTA that actually pick winners and losers in the marketplace. So I think President Trump was right to try to renegotiate some of these trade policies. But I also think that free markets are incredibly important when it comes to building economic wealth and prosperity. You know, thinking about growing our economy today, there's 3 legs to the stool. We're not on stools today. These are little chairs on risers. But if you think about a stool, and there's 3 legs. It's about trade, it's about tax policy, and it's about regulatory policy. Donald Trump had most of it right when we were in 2017 and 2018 doing the Trump tax cuts, deregulating the economy, building the Trump economic boom. And what happened? The Chinese unleashed COVID all across the world, and it started crushing our economy because it forced lockdowns of businesses, shutdowns, it stifled growth. Now they're trying to change economic prosperity through getting rid of energy independence. And what does that do? It creates inflation, right? So I want to have free markets. I don't want to have distortions in the marketplace that subsidize one thing over the other. That's government making winners and losers. We cannot allow for that. It happens in Obamacare as well, right? Helping people, subsidizing the costs through the premiums for sick people. I want to take care of sick people through high-risk schools administered through the states. I want to have free market solutions, invest in HSAs, all these big pro-growth ideas that increase wages, increase productivity, and add to jobs in the U.S. economy. That's an America First approach.
Thank you. Ms. Moore, what's your approach to ensuring the fairness and integrity of elections in the United States?
So, our last presidential election did have fraud. There was substantial fraud across the United States, and we're looking at an election where fraud is also going to be present. So what do we do? Well, we have to make sure that those who are responsible for engaging in interstate syndicates that are violating our rights to a free election are prosecuted, are undercover, and exposed for that. We have individuals like George Soros who are funding Antifa, BLM, and other organizations that are there for the purpose of interfering with free and fair elections, with this whole ballot harvesting movement, with this whole movement of influencing the people to vote in a certain way by simply going into old folks' homes, going into retirement convalescent centers. In addition, taking mail-in ballots, and this is the greatest invitation for fraud. So all of this has to be changed, but elections under the Constitution are state issues, principally. However, where there is interstate activity by Soros-backed individuals to come in and stuff ballots or come in and influence people in ballot harvesting operations to fill in their ballots for them and so on, we need to interdict that, both with federal efforts, because it's interstate, and with state efforts. I told the sheriffs in this state, I said, what I want to see is you deputize former military, former police, train them to be election officers, and put them in the places where we know fraud is likely to happen so they can make arrests on the spot, including at the clerk's offices where there are ballot boxes, and including in old folks' homes, convalescent centers, and elsewhere. When it comes to the mail-in ballot problem, we have got a big problem. But what we do have is, because we have a Republican governor, we have the ability to have a majority in election in the Board of Elections. And that majority needs to be active to protect against and guard against fraud with a mail-in ballot.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, how do you propose to get rid of tabulators, early vote and drop boxes, and absentee ballots that facilitate election fraud?
Get back to the Constitution. Get back to values. Stop the mail-in balloting, which is insecure. Stop the absentee balloting, except for people who are truly dislocated at election time, like the military. Disconnect the machine from the internet. Let's hold people accountable. That's the only way we're going to get back to an election. And it's going to be credible. We got to get back to election day, not election month, not election 2 months. We got to get our values back. We've got to stop what is happening in this country. And you know, quite frankly, if we don't do it, none of our elections will mean anything. The Constitution says that everyone, including this fly, has the right to vote. But that's one vote per person. That's one part of our city. We got to get back to a time where elections meant something, where they stood for something. And we do that by doing those things I just mentioned, getting back to our Constitution. Remember, the Constitution is not something you can toss around. It's the software. It's what each of us must function under. I think once we do that, we'll begin to see that we'll have elections. And I agree with you. I think elections will stop. You can't get that many votes coming out of the basement. You can't get 80 million votes coming out of the basement by being barely able to stand. We have to stand up for this country. This is our country. People who believe in this country, we believe in the rule of law and the Constitution.
Thank you. Mr. Garcia, what is your plan to fix our current healthcare system?
Healthcare is a big problem these days. I mentioned earlier that we have 1,000 different counties across America right now who don't have a primary care manager. Who does that affect? That affects our seniors. That affects low-income communities, people who can't drive 100 and 150 miles to go see a doctor. I'll tell you a story about my father. I don't have any problem sharing him. He's a ranch hand in South Texas. He works outside 6 days a week. He's 63 years old. He's never made over $55,000 a year. He hovers around the $50,000 mark. He can't afford health insurance. He back before Obamacare, it was going to be $400 a month that he couldn't afford. Now that Obamacare is implemented, it's $800 a month. He really can't afford. These are the people that I come from, and it matters. We have to have competition in this market to drive up to drive up competition and drive down the cost of healthcare. We also have to reform the way that politics works and special interests work. You know why there's a shortage of doctors? I can tell you briefly why there's a shortage of doctors. Because the Medical Association back in the 90s thought that there was too many doctors and their costs and their wages were going to go down. They weren't going to be able to make enough money off the patient. So they artificially went to Congress and they artificially squeezed the amount of residency programs that exist. So we got about 43,000 people that graduate medical school, and there's only about 38,000 residency programs across the nation. And so there's a bottleneck into the system, which means there's less doctors, and we have an immigration system that doesn't work easily for people to come in and fill these roles. So it makes every day more expensive. Who makes every day more expensive? Washington, D.C. makes every day more expensive. They're part of this problem. They're the number one driver of all the problems that we see with rising costs and lack of health care. Who does that affect? Again, it affects working people who don't have the means to have these Cadillac systems, or don't have a fancy job. It's time to start prioritizing those people who Washington has left behind, and I'm that candidate to do it.
Thank you. Mr. Parkinson, how do you address, as U.S. Senator, the mental health crisis in our country?
Mental health is a part of everybody's lives, right? You need to have self-assessment, and if you think you need help, whether you're contemplating suicide, there's all sorts of national resources that are out there to the American people to confront the mental health crisis. Some of it is born through drug addiction. Some of it's born through sex addiction. Some of it is born through, the natural things in your brain that cause you to be bipolar or depressed. So we need to make sure that we're providing resources to the American people. And I think that, obviously the federal government is so big, there's so much money, right? And we did do a mental health bill, I think in 2017 underneath President Trump. It might have been 2018. You have to fact check me on that. And it didn't really do a lot to tackle the big issues of mental health in our communities. And I also don't think that it helps mental health for kids when we close down the schools and basically blame the children and say, you know what, you were going to kill your teacher, you're going to kill your grandparents because you guys carry all these germs around and you don't wash your hands enough. And there's still a mental health crisis among children in Northern Virginia. There's kids wearing masks out on the soccer field today when they're exercising. We need to be able to take this as a leadership position, tell those little kids, first of all, it's not your fault. It's not your fault that COVID spread. Number two, the air is safe to breathe. You can give another kid a hug. You can play with the same soccer ball and not have to worry about a global pandemic. We need to get back to reality. We need to get back to normalcy. So I think that some of that does happen from not spending a single dollar, but taking the leadership into the community, mentoring the youth. We need to have more mentorship
across the board. So many children are falling through the cracks of our communities today. I want to be a voice for them. Thank you. We got a couple of quick questions. We're just going to give you a minute. It's going to hand you cards. So we're going to give a minute for each one. Anymore. How do you plan on cutting spending? We can't afford it.
Yeah, we have $35 trillion national debt. Within the next 7 years, it's going to be over $60 trillion. We will not be the reserve currency of the world anymore. The dollar will not, and this will be an utter disaster. The Chinese are working with the Russians right now on a thing called BRICS. They're replacing around the world the currency, the American currency, with the Chinese renminbi. So how do we solve this problem? We have to dramatically reduce the cost of the federal government. We need to repeal the entire climate change agenda. That's $1 trillion a year in savings. And looking at that, we need to close the Department of Education, the Department of Commerce, and also the Department of Energy. We need to get rid of several of the federal agencies, the Federal Trade Commission, the Consumer Product Safety Commission, and others. We need to substantially reduce the size and scope of the federal government. We need to devolve regulation and power to the states and ensure that we pass a bill I wrote for Ron Paul called the Economic Recovery Tax Act. And that bill, that's for the rates. It was the Congressional Responsibility and Accountability Act. That bill will do one thing that will dramatically reduce the government.
Thank you.
I'll tell you later.
Justin, as senator, how would you provide accountability to the federal law enforcement agencies and the intelligence community that are weaponized?
To remind them that the agencies will be shut down. To the United States Senator, not only will we shut the agencies down, but we will hold individuals accountable for unlawful orders. You know, under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, that body of law that guides all military personnel, there are some orders that commanding officers can give, or lieutenants or captains can give, that are unlawful. And you, the individual, on the receipt of that order, ought to know there are some things you should not do. You cannot order someone to be shot. You cannot order someone to steal. You can order people to do things that are compliant with that. In this case, when you arrest parents at school board meetings, when you tell our law enforcement people, the FBI, you keep tracks on Republicans and just Republicans, you do that either in the FBI or the IRS, you're in jeopardy, not only your agency, but your individual freedom. You need to remind people that we have a account.
Thank you. Mr. Garcia, it's known that minorities in Virginia get harsher sentences compared to other races. What would you do to assist to change that?
I'm not familiar with minorities getting harsher sentences than any other races, but if that is the case, we definitely need to look into it and find out what reasons that thing exists. And so we got to have equality under the law. If you commit a crime and you should be held accountable, you should get a jury of your peers the way the law is written. And if you're found guilty of that crime, you should deserve a just punishment regardless of the race or creed or color or background or ethnicity or where it is that you come from. That's how we that's how we attained this colorblind society that we were supposed to be achieving all these years until the progressive left, switched it all on us. I believe in equality across the board. I think that there are unique challenges in minority communities because mostly on the economic scale and have disproportionate crime in their neighborhoods, and especially because we have an open border and they're being flooded and hurt the most these days. So we can address it that way. But as far as sentencing goes, equality.
Thank you. Mr. Carson, Tim Game is very popular in the Latino community in Virginia. What is your strategy to win Hispanics in Virginia?
You gotta show up. 4 out of 5 of us showed up today. And you got to spoke in all communities all across Virginia and take the case directly to the people. When they hear from us, they're receptive to our ideas. I talked about the Republican Party being the party of ideas. And the Hispanic community is actually very, very conservative. They care about parents' rights. They care about the economic opportunities. They want school choice, right? They want public safety. They want rule of law on the border. They want sovereignty. They want to assimilate underneath the American flag. Everybody does. We're all Americans. And so I think that you just gotta show up in these communities, gotta make the case to people why you can defeat Tim Kaine. Right? Tim Kaine is bilingual. I think he did his mission in Honduras or Honduras, yeah. And so, you know, he takes junkets with other senators because he still likes to go down. And the thing is, he's full of junkets.
He's only right under control. All right, 1 minute closing, we're just gonna roll right through. Please respect the time.
All right, well, I have spent 38 years fighting for your rights as a constitutional lawyer against the government. I've not been a person who's been employed by the government to protect the government. I've been employed for individuals, for companies that have had their rights and their economic liberties violated, and I fought for them consistently over the last 38 years. I've not just fought for them, but I've also defeated the government over and over and over again. I understand the greatest enemy, the threat to our liberty and our rights, which is the administrative state in this country. Until we get hold of this entity that is now making 3/4 of all federal law, we will not be in a position to save our nation from what is inevitably going to be a communist dictatorship unless we fundamentally reverse the direction of this nation. It's not enough to just be a good person. It's not enough to raise the flag and say I'm a nice guy. You got to know how to attack Tim Kaine relentlessly. We have to defeat him. There can be no option here. This is not an optional situation. It's a necessity. Let's save Virginia and save America.
So I'm the guy with all the experience. I'm the only Marine in this race. I'm the only Navy Lieutenant Commander retired after 26 years of combined service in this race. I'm the only lawyer that's practiced law for 45 years. I'm the only lawyer who has practiced federal law, constitutional law, immigration law, military law. I'm the only one born on the 4th of July. I'm the only person on this stage who can tell you without a doubt that I have the courage to do all the things that we're talking about today. Some of us don't want lawyers, I get it. I've been one. Some of us don't want people in the military, I get it. I've been one. Some of us don't want people who believe they understand the Constitution, patriotism, if you will, running through our veins. I have supported Donald Trump. I will continue to do that. I am the best qualified candidate on this stage by far. It is not even close. I will address problems that we face as Americans, and you know I'll do that. That's what I've been doing all of my life.
Ladies and gentlemen, you got a choice to make. It's an important one. Your choice, your decision is who can beat Tim Kaine in 2024 in November. And I ask you to just listen to the people who are up here today in front of you. You've had people promise that they're going to fire people. We've had people promise that they're going to deport massive people. We've had people talk about angry, divisive issues in a way that you have to make the decision. Can that type of argument beat Tim Kaine in Virginia in 2024? I've told you from the beginning that I have a positive message of a better tomorrow on how we grow jobs and opportunity, and how we talk about the American dream to the people that we want to show up and vote for. I believe that I'm the living embodiment of where you can come from, next to nowhere with next to nothing, and be able to run for high office because I live in America. Now, I dream big because my God is big and I live in this country and I was raised to do so. I believe that this is a message that can unify the Republican Party and bring aside those people that may not agree with us on every issue, but they're going to give me the chance to represent them. I ask you to stand with me in that effort.
It truly is an honor to be a candidate for the United States Senate. It's not something that I take lightly. I'm trying to earn the vote through building trust and support from Virginians from all walks of life. Early voting began on May 3rd, and I ask you to consider voting for me early in person or on our primary date on June 18th, because we can defeat Tim Kaine. We can win Virginia without Trump, whom I've endorsed. We can actually make a difference on the economy. We can close our southern border, and we can be an advocate for children inside the classroom, restoring parents' rights. But it's not going to be easy. And I counted 49 people in the room today, including this little girl here. 13, 8, 4, and 2-year-olds in my household. And all of you, maybe with that one exception, know probably 1,000 to 10,000 people.
So really, we are speaking to an enormous crowd today. I need each and every single one of you to build the enthusiasm. Tell all your friends, look out 10K, we're coming to win in 2024. Thank you all so much. So I would love to thank personally each and every candidate for coming out here. I know I told you guys that I was gonna have real questions, and I think we did. This isn't about love here. We have a real candidate in Tim Kaine. And we want to make sure that we prepare you guys to beat him. Because that's our sole purpose. American United Foundation is a foundation created to bring real issues to the people. We're not here to endorse any candidate. We're here to show you who the candidates are, provide them information on the platform so they can make the best decisions and build the best platform to defeat the progressive left. I'd like to thank you guys. Also, to those live streaming, thank you so much. Thank you for all your questions. You guys bombarded me. I have note cards. The Costco over here. If I didn't get to your question specifically, I apologize. We ran out of time. Thank you once again. Kent will be here. Also, those picked for the focus group or asked to be part of the focus group, please go to that. This is very critical. This is information that we're going to provide to the candidates so they can see exactly what resonated and what didn't. Because my job is to prepare each and every one of you for the future. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'd like to thank my team too.
I do. Yes. You get the whole. I know. Yeah.
Also, if you want to be part of those streets, head back, see Paul Perry.
Oh.
But I would love for you to get it.
It's a lot.
I was sort of.
Just make sure you understand. Because I don't.
My intent was to my job was to send it to my airport friends. Yes, so I no, I was I said one with me, and but I wanted to just another person. I want yeah. So let me ask if you guys can take a picture. Oh, I did.
There is hot flag.
There you go. So let me see if I can ask someone to take a picture of us, maybe in the background. And logo. Yeah. No, that's fine. That's cool. Guess who I missed? But this thing with by the flag or something like that. Hey, Philip, can you take a picture of me?
I'm sorry, I didn't realize.
You know, the other constitutional actions. Yeah.
invited.
I'm just trying to. Did you need one of these? I'm sorry. I really spit. Of course, thank you for coming. You've got Sam. Thank you so much. Good to see
You're seeing more of these.
I didn't read it.
Oh my God. You know, I moved to this. Year ago, actually. So the first thing I would mark always says, I mentioned all these, Bishop of Arlington has the bowl is really long. It was just announced. And being on the chair, I saw the bishop by himself on the table. And then someone said, And then it was going back to go live, shortly. And also in this and so in trying to and I used to concert. That's why I go back and say, and we'll check